Hi, everybody. Welcome to Sacred Sundays. What a great group this is. Wow. Can everybody hear me? Wonderful. Okay, I'm getting this. That's good. All right, great. I am your host, Ora Nadrich, and just to tell you a little bit about me, I am a life coach. I am a mindfulness meditation teacher and author of Says Who, and creator of the Says Who method for transforming negative and fear-based thoughts. I had this idea for Sacred Sunday. I was inspired to bring together thought leaders, influencers, shapeshifters, people that are doing really important work, people that are very committed and devoted to raising consciousness, and who can also shine a light on areas of the human condition that we might be grappling with, and we need that extra opening, that extra wisdom, that understanding that can really help us on our life journey. And I couldn't think of two more perfect people to do that with tonight than with my special guests, Dr. Judith Orloff and Corey Folsom. So welcome. Thank you for being here tonight as my very special guests. So let me tell you a little bit about both Judith and Corey. Dr. Judith Orloff is New York Times best-selling author of the Empath Survival Guide, Life Strategies for Sensitive People. Dr. Orloff, she's holding it up, yes, a must-have. I highly recommend it, and she will be signing them during the break, and after we're over with this Sacred Sunday, the 2 hours are over, so you can certainly pick it up, and Judith will sign her book. Dr. Orloff is a psychiatrist, an empath herself. How could you write that book if you were not an empath? Yes, right? And is on the UCLA Psychiatric Clinical Faculty. She synthesizes the pearls of traditional medicine with cutting-edge knowledge of intuition, energy, and spirituality. Dr. Orloff also specializes in treating empaths and highly sensitive people in her private practice. To learn more about empaths and her free empath support newsletter, as well as Dr. Orloff's books and workshop schedule, visit drjudithorloff.com. Corey Folsom is a coach specializing in skills to support intimate relationships with greater ease. A harmonious and loving intimacy is a learned skill. But where are we supposed to learn it? He helps couples with Tantric, intuition, instruction, coaching, and intimate relationship skills who want to take their life together to the next level, as well as couples in crisis, and assist single men and women prepare to meet someone special. Corey is based in Venice, and his blog is corerelationship.wordpress.com, a resource for embracing conscious intimacy. You can set up a session with Corey at lovecoachcorey@gmail.com. So before we get started, because I've got a lot of wonderful questions to ask you both, and I can tell you all you're going to leave here with a lot of gems and pearls from Judith and Corey, I want to begin with a meditation. So if you will all join me, please, in, I know some of you are not sitting comfortably, but if you can find some comfort in your discomfort, that would be great. Just get comfortable. Find that place. If you want to sit on the floor, for those of you that are not on chairs, please do so. Just try to your best ability, to get comfortable. And let's bring our focus and our awareness to being here together at Mystic Journey Bookstore. And thank you, Mystic Journey, for hosting us and providing this beautiful container for us to come together collectively to share this experience with each other. And let's focus on our breath. Take a deep breath in and let it out. Another breath in and let it go. And feel yourself in this moment, sitting here, being aware of your body, any sensations that you might be feeling, and just surrendering to being in present time. Not the time of yesterday, which is come and gone, nor the time of tomorrow, which is not yet here, but rather the moment that you are most alive in, the moment of now. And feel yourself expanding into this moment. It is so expansive. There is no beginning, no end. It just simply is. Allowing yourself to free fall into this moment of now. And to come together as you and with everyone else that is here collectively, sharing this space together and allowing for the unknown, allowing for an experience that you've never had before, the wonders and the abundance that each moment has to offer us awaits us now. Feeling yourself being present, feeling the warmth of your breath, and feeling yourself available to this moment and all the moments that will come. If your mind is wandering, wants to take you out of this moment that is so perfect and needs nothing other than for you to be present in it, simply bring your focus and your awareness back to your breath, which is always there for you to return to. Feeling yourself present now, and feeling your focus and your awareness in your body, grounded in this room at this time. Allow your attention to be back in your body, and at your own time and pace, to open your eyes when you feel to do so. Is everybody back in the room here? All right, wonderful. It's interesting when you hear a big truck go by and you just integrate that into your meditation. You say, no truck, you're not going to get me out of the moment. All right, so let's begin with my first question for you is, which I really want to know. How did you two meet? And why are you doing this interview together? You're my first couple that I've done Sacred Sundays with. So I'm excited that it's you two. So how did you meet? Tell me your story.
Well, I'll start. I met Corey. We met each other. He was my Tantra teacher. And so today we'll talk about Tantra, intimacy, sexuality, empaths, and how that's all connected. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm an empath. I am an emotional sponge. I'm very open, I'm very sensitive, and I absorb the emotions and other energy from others into my own body. And that can create a lot of problems for me in relationships because I have my own needs for alone time and so many special needs that I have. I can't do, you're smiling, a traditional relationship. But empaths often are attracted to unavailable people. And so that was my pattern. I'd either be attracted to unavailable people, and sometimes I look at him and I lose all my thoughts. What was I saying? Unavailable people. Either I would be with unavailable people and then pine after them. Why aren't they doing this, that, or the other? Or else I would be with someone. It would probably last at the most 2 years. And then I'd feel so claustrophobic and so smothered, I would bolt. All right, and those are very typical patterns for empaths. And so I met yet another one over 4 years ago. And I was in incredible pain over why this person wasn't responding to me in the way I needed to and wanted him to, and he was so unavailable. But I was in so much pain, and then he broke up with me, and I was just in incredible pain. And I had been in therapy, and for years talking about what are my emotional blocks, what's standing in my way of finding somebody I can have a full relationship with. And he says, well, just keep coming, we'll keep talking about it. And then when he said that, it just felt so wrong because it wasn't working. You know, it wasn't breaking through. And so I called my friend, Charles Muir, who is a Tantra teacher in Northern California, and I was crying. I was in the Whole Foods parking lot. I was crying in pain. Because you know how some of us get. Empaths can be really intense. And I just remember him saying, Judith, don't worry, just don't stop loving. You know, but I think you ought to work with a Tantra practitioner to help get to the depth of your pattern, to begin to reprogram yourself and heal and go in a more positive direction. And I got a really strong yes on that. And Corey was the person that Charles recommended, as was another man. So when I first started, I was working with 2 people intentionally because I get very attached to people, and I thought if I just work with one, I'd get too attached. And it's not, you know, it wasn't at all a personal relationship. It was a student healer. And so that's how we met. And we've known one another for over 4 years. That was nice, that sound. Did you hear that? Exclamation. And it's been an incredible journey. It's what I've always wanted as an empath, but could never achieve it. And, we're doing well. I'm not easy. It's not easy. And as you can tell, you living with an empath, I have very special needs, and I really have a lot of time alone.
So how do you do that, Judith? How do you guys
well,
navigate?
That was how the story of how we met.
So, because there's so much to cover with just what you just said. So, the needs of an empath, needing private time for yourself, needing space, joining together with someone else's energy, empath being high maintenance or however you want to describe it.
Special needs.
Special needs. Best to describe it that way. Special needs. And so there you are. You find yourself in this relationship with your tantric teacher. How did
Well, it wasn't quite like that. Do you want to?
Well, at some point, within a few months, 4 or 5 months, we had to kind of transition away from the student teacher in order to be a couple.
Okay. And was that an easy transition? Was it a challenging transition?
It was a natural. I would say it was a natural transition. It was just what we both wanted, and it was very intentional.
Yeah, beautiful. So how did Corey's tantric work and relationship coaching help you break that pattern of always seeking out the unavailable male?
Well, the first thing was I would never be honest with my partners about any of my empath needs, so I would just try and fit into a mold that wasn't right for me, of too much togetherness, too much this, too much that. And I would choose long-distance relationships, too, which empaths often like, because then you really get your space. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that what I wanted deeply in my heart was to connect to somebody and have an enduring relationship more than 2 years, and not go through stretches of a decade of not being with anybody, you know, which was my pattern. So, and it's in the chapter on love and empaths. But the first thing that I did with Corey was I was able, because he wasn't my partner at the time, and it was a professional relationship, I was able to express my authentic needs and my fear of, you know, that someone would leave me because I'm too intense, or that, you know, I couldn't express my empath needs because you would reject me. And I'm still, you know, even now it's sometimes a challenge, because I just never had that support growing up or in relationships. I just never had that support where somebody really got it. And it's still so amazing to me how he does get that. But how the way he worked with me was that he let me express my needs. We did energy work. We did connecting. We did touch. And, you know, when you touch the body energetically, it can evoke a lot of blocks and a lot of feelings that come up. You know, so it's much more than talk therapy. It's like, you know, somebody touching you. I mean, there's this handsome man who's sitting across from me, and he's so understanding, and I couldn't believe it was real, you know, but it was. It is. It's unbelievable. You know, it is real. It's authentic with him. And it just took some trust, and then lots of fear of getting suffocated, fear of you know, I vacillate between suffocation and abandonment. And it could flip like this. But I could talk to him. You know, I could talk to him, and he could hold me. He could hold that energy, and he could look at me in the eyes and not be scared away. And that for me was a big, big healing. And it was a beautiful way for me to start this in a professional relationship. And there are a lot of women and men who haven't been in a relationship for a while, and I've recommended Tantra to them, and some of them do, some of them don't, but sometimes they say it's just too intimate for me. You know, I'm thinking, I was at my bottom of unavailable men pattern. I didn't want that anymore. I was in too much pain, period, and I just knew, you know, I had to go another direction. I mean, how was I in the beginning? And in terms of a client.
Yeah, it was a process of making the honesty okay, and the showing your true feelings okay, and having them be welcomed and honored. And you know, nothing you would present as your distress or your unsureness, none of that was a problem, because it was truth, and I'm very attached to truth, and that's, to me, it's need to know information, and we can work with that.
That's lovely. So as a psychotherapist, why was psychotherapy not enough to get through this lifelong issue that you had of unavailable men? I mean, this pattern that you had endured for so long, and then you just had enough. You sought that out. I mean, you described that going to Corey as a tantric coach was, you were willing and wanting to do something different. Or do you think psychotherapy could not have addressed it in the same way? I mean, obviously different, but maybe as helpful.
I think psychotherapy can work. I dealt with my emotionally unavailable father, and we talked about it. But I felt intuitively what I needed was a change in my cells. I needed a change in my energy field. I needed a new imprinting, and I wanted to imprint on him because he was a good role model. And so I wanted to work energetically with a fantastic role model in a professional setting. And, we would sit across from one another and meditate or put our hands on each other's hands to exchange energy. And that, to me, is very intimate. And it evokes all kinds of emotions that come up as a result of working in a body sense, not in an intercourse sense, but in a body sense of getting to issues. And especially as an empath, what I liked about professional relationship was that it came and went. I was able to really have a lot of time to process, a couple weeks between sessions.
Yeah. And we also feel that, emotions aren't sent to a self-storage, or a warehouse, but that we store emotions in our bodies. And so the emotions are our truth and our power. And so they're not something necessarily to be afraid of, but to be welcomed and embraced. And so there's that, and also the belief that, our nervous system is just as intelligent as our brain, and that if we want to find what's true for ourselves, we go to our emotions, we go to our body, and we feel.
Right. And as empaths, we can intuit a sense of trust. And, that's something that's really important. So the developing of that trust in another person is so important. And when you started to feel that towards Corey, where, okay, this is not like any other man you've been with so far. And when you could free fall into that trust, did it happen over a gradual amount of time? How long would you say that you felt that you really could trust that?
A long time.
Yeah.
But when a man comes, or a woman, a Tantra teacher is a woman, comes to your door and is standing there 100% present, ready to work with you, in maybe ways you haven't worked together before, it's what I wanted. I mean, each person has to decide if, Tantra is the right way to go, but it is an option to get through blocks that you wouldn't normally get through otherwise, and it makes you face yourself, and it's through touch. I mean, there were times when he was touching my legs, or we would, touch my heart, and so you feel this connection with somebody. And then I also had a hard time with attachment, because I'd always get extremely attached to the man I was with, and when he would leave, it would be horribly painful for me. And so we had to do a ritual of I love you, I respect you, I release you. I go, no, I don't want to release you. That. So what comes?
Yes. Learning how to be okay with that. Learning.
But that's like giving you practice for other people. That's why it's so powerful, because I felt it so strongly, where I would cry, where, it was time to end, time for him to go where he was going, and with his other clients.
And then he would return. So the returning assures us that
exactly
you do
he did what he said he was going to do, which
Right.
was extremely important to me to establish trust.
Right, exactly.
And that's, part of the whole setup is that you're with someone who doesn't, need you to, to take it somewhere else to pleasure them or something like that. It's also a practice of clear boundaries.
Right. Let's go into that, because we're talking about Tantra, and not everybody, there's a lot of different ideas about what Tantra is, which really goes into my next question. Is Tantra, which is one of the, I think, the myths of Tantra, is that it's just wild sex, Kama Sutra. There were all these things. I remember when I was a teenager and I had my first book on Kama Sutra. Is that Tantra? Or does it speak to the deeper needs of the masculine and feminine? So do you want to walk us through that?
Sure. So really, there's all sorts of schools of Tantra. There's all sorts of volumes at which it can be played, and all of it is good. And really, for me, what it distills to, or the way we approach it as, say, Neo-Tantra, is it's about being true to what is in the moment, to have a ritual, a setup where, two people come together and just be a divine mirror for the other person, see the divine in each other. And so, I've had multiple Tantra sessions with, say, new clients who I didn't even touch her till maybe the 4th session because of where she was starting from and what was appropriate. And so it doesn't have to have touch. And so but where we generally start with is the breath. And the breath is our guide and our way in. And so there's a lot of breathing practices. There's oftentimes eye gazing. And so, but it's being intentional, and there's a setup, there's a container, there's boundaries, there's things we won't do. There's that intention of just slowing down, breathing, being with another person in sacred communion, if you will, in the communion of the moment.
Right. Now, between the masculine and feminine as we know it, and I'm not a tantric teacher, but that men and women can function differently sexually. So is there a difference in how you introduce the same concept of Tantra to the male and the female? Do you know males who might be more readily acceptable of pleasure seeking and women wanting to connect emotionally? Not that men don't, but that they can go about their sexual relationships differently.
Sure. And, so for a man, that sexual flow will bring about his open-heartedness. And for the woman, her open-heartedness will lead her to a sexual flow. And so, I work with men who usually have some issue of some kind, like premature ejaculation or something like that. And so, the man's work is to have himself as be his own container, and to learn to build his pleasure, build his charge, without having to discharge. Discharge isn't the goal in the Tantra. Right. It's building his energy and just being his presence in that essential, powerful moment. And so for the woman, it's the more pleasure she can run in her body, that's great.
Mm-hmm. And isn't it also, taking pleasure and taking it higher? Isn't that also what Tantra is? In that it's not just for as you said, the release, but again, for men and women, it can be very different. Intimacy can be very different. The act of intimacy can be very different for a man and a woman. Women want to sometimes be held and not necessarily have intercourse, and the intimacy for a man can be through his sexuality. So there's a lot of that as well, I think, that can be different.
Yeah. So for the woman, she brings life, if you will, and so her attractiveness is the portal for the man to find his depth. Mm-hmm. And so and the sex in general, tantric ritual, eye gazing, whatever we do, is really steps or a mechanism in which to remember who we are, to find the moment, to find ourselves, to find our truth, to remember who we are and then come to my partner as that.
Right. What is transcendent sex versus mechanical sex? How would you describe that?
Go ahead.
You both can weigh in on that.
Well, another what just comes to mind when you ask the question is, friction sex versus energy sex. I think of sex as just an what is that word? Acronym for sacred energy exchange.
Mm-hmm.
And so with transcendent sex, it's kind of a question of how deep can I glow, not how fast I can go.
Mm-hmm.
And so and how deeply can I feel? And how deeply can I feel of myself and who I am and offer that to my partner. So a fun little saying that I came up with was that I coach especially men with is, am I clinging or am I bringing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so finding me and then finding myself at depth
Mm-hmm.
and offering that to my partner.
Mm-hmm. Judith, do you want to say
Thank
something?
Also, the essence of the session for me was that he was coming there to work with me and worship my feminine energy. And that's what it was about. It wasn't about him. It was all about me receiving and learning and growing and expanding.
Mm.
And I think many women, especially empaths, don't know what that is, to have the masculine come in and just really get you. And it's just you. It's your beautiful feminine energy. And no fear of abandonment, no ambivalence coming from the man, no just wanting to have physical sex and no spiritual or heart connections, none of that. It's about, I'm here for you. He's here for me. I mean, to give that to somebody is so precious. I mean, to me it was, I didn't believe it. I just didn't think it was true. So it took time. I wanted to believe it. But it took time to trust that someone could actually do that. I mean, not just him. There are others who actually do this, where they enter the room, your sacred room, and you, the feminine are what he bows to. Really. And, you think, in our culture in Los Angeles, who really does that, But I think more and more people are opening up. And I think in terms of empaths, that's what empaths need. It's very nurturing to be revered in that way.
Well, it's being mindful of your partner. I think mindfulness fits into this so beautifully in that you are really present with your partner. You're in the present moment with your partner. And I've written articles on that, and one of the things I said that if you're in a sexual act with somebody and you feel there's a disconnect, that you can communicate that to each other, that there's not a connection happening. Your bodies are connecting, but you're not heartfully connecting. And that one of the things about being so in the present moment, that you can actually be in an intimate act with somebody, but as we know with mindfulness, being anywhere but in the moment that is, you can be so intimate and your mind could be thinking about what you're going to have for dinner. There's a lot of places where our minds go. So to really be present with each other in our act of intimacy, mindfulness, I feel, is so compatible to that, about bringing your focus and your awareness to your partner, that you are so present, and giving yourselves the permission, if you feel that you're not, to be able to even communicate that to your partner. Say, look, we need to stop. Here's where I am, or here's where I'm not, and to be able to feel comfortable with your partner to communicate that, rather than just go through the motions and you're not being authentic and you're not being honest and you're not being real with each other. Do you know?
And especially, I want to say, as an empath, if you feel your partner's energy isn't quite right, you don't really want to get close with him or her, you have to be able to say that. If he comes home angry, I'm not using him as an example, but if your person comes home angry, That's not healthy for empaths to go in and, bro, honey, be near me. It's like, I think you ought to work on that for a while. Rather than just pretending or trying to make it good when it isn't. I mean, that to me was very liberating. And to have somebody who can accept that, that in and of itself.
I think you need to check your mindfulness, as you're entering into the sacred space with one another.
Right.
How present am I? To check with self. Am I here? Am I present? Am I really about to be present with this other person?
But I also want to say it doesn't have to be for a long time. You can be mindfully check in for 5 minutes or 10 minutes and be very intimate for that time if that's what you have. You don't have to spend, a whole evening, hours and hours being mindful with one another. If you don't have that time, you can have some really good time, many times, many connections. We're really good at that.
Yeah, those little
I'm
mini
good at
connects. Let me ask you this question. Corey's blog mentions magic moments. Would you talk about that?
Certainly. It just goes right along with what Judith was just saying, which it's what helps keep intimacy alive is this thing I call magic moments. And, we come together oftentimes for chemistry, and if a couple stays together, it stays together for intimacy. And there are skills and tools and practices that support intimacy, one of my favorite is what I call magic moments, which are those, we'll say, 30-second stop and be with each other. Especially good at transitions, leaving the house, coming home, mealtime, bedtime, where if you just pause, hold each other, look in each other's eyes, and just be present for those 30 seconds. That's just, it helps re-anchor you throughout your time of why you're together in the first place. And so, and another thing I really like, in addition to magic moments, is that, we can communicate what we're up for, and I think one of the things that so many couples do is they don't initiate contact, they don't touch each other if they're not up for a full sexual encounter. And so what I love is, I call it no obligation touch. So just because one partner reaches out to touch the other person doesn't mean that, I'm ready to have sex now. It's just an act of affection, and you can let it be what it is, and you can let them communicate what they're really up for. And you can, and it can be just eye gazing, using your voice, using your touch, using your eyes. So just those short-term hello. I see you as a divine being, and I really love you.
I want to mention that sometimes in our days, or we can get busy, we can get hurried. We all have fallen into that trap. And I think what's great is to be able to catch it, that we can circle back to that and say to our partner, I realized I wasn't connecting with you earlier today, or when we spoke earlier, I wasn't really present with you and looking you in the eye. And that's really helpful, I find, in relationships, to be able to, note to self, I wasn't really present when I was, because we are not always going to be so on the ball with being present with one another.
Especially guys.
Didn't want to say that, but I'm glad you did. Yes, it's
What
true.
do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is I'm a guy, and so my life is a process of forgetting, and then remembering, who I am as a man, as a partner to a beautiful woman who I really appreciate, as I've been in my head for the last however long, I want to connect to my center. And so that back and forth, that constantly reconnecting.
I do that with my husband, He can come home and he's been working all day, and I can feel it energetically because, you need to bring it down a few notches. You need to decompress. So the way I communicate with him is mindfully, because it's very easy to react to somebody who walks in the door who might have more frenetic energy or might not be really connecting with you in making that eye contact that we want. So that, again, is the communication, and that, you can have your whole day, you walk through the door, and you're carrying that into the sacred space, So again, the communication of that, I think, is so important, how we can work together.
Sometimes when I remember and when I need to, I will sit in the driveway, either in my car, or oftentimes I'll get out and stand and look up at the sky, or if it's night, the moon, and just do a little prayer, meditation, 2 minutes to center myself before I go in the house. And that's really helpful. And I was also wanted to circle back to another form of non-obligation, no obligation touch, which I just thought of, that I really love, is spooning. And so
spooning. Who doesn't love spooning? How many of you? I just want to raise the hands here.
Not all
How many of
empaths
you
like spooning.
spooning? Maybe some of you don't. Yes.
You don't have to like spooning every time.
And so
You can like spooning, though.
I like spooning.
I do too.
I'm going to raise my
everybody-
hand.
Like someone was sharing with me before that the cuddle hold, where if you're an empath with a non-empath and they get you in the cuddle hold at night, it's like, get out of here, leave me alone, because we don't want that.
And you might not want it when they want it.
When they want, exactly.
Do you know?
But that's why you have to, instead of being tortured all night long, cuddle home. Really, but this is what happens. I mean, my patients, I work with people who stay tortured all night because they don't want to hurt their spouse's feelings. And if you're an empath, you can't ever have a relationship work if you do that. You'll just bolt. It'll be too miserable, or you develop some symptom. Or some.
So it's a wonderful thing, though, when you come home and your partner says, I can see that you're carrying energy from the road or whatever. Come lie on the bed with me for a few minutes, and you just hold each other, spoon, breathe, and it's like two tuning forks. And after a few minutes, 20 minutes, whatever, it's good. And then you can go transition to doing other things.
You got to give each other the space. Again, when I mentioned my husband, it's like giving him the space to go to the room of his own, to change his clothes, to, find his center. It's finding that way with each other in our relationships, that we can really honor and respect what each other needs, and then return back to that place where we can be intimate and that's comfortable for both of us. We're about to finish our first hour. It flew by really quickly. On that note, Corey, how would you feel about just taking us through a tantric exercise, something that you think we could join together with you now?
Sure. How many minutes would you like me to do it?
5? How about a 5-minute one? Yeah? Okay, great.
Yeah. So I'm going to combine two meditations, but it'll all go into 5 minutes. And so if you could just lower your eyes and breathe. Breathe easily and fully. Feel your lungs. Feel your weight on the chair or the floor. And just try to fill your lungs fully with each in-breath. Breathing to the bottom of your lungs and filling all the way up, and then letting it go. And then when at the bottom of the breath, you can pull in your stomach and send that last little bit of air out. So we call that the complete breath. All the way in, and then all the way out. And just keep it easy. You're not forcing it, you're just being intentional. Complete breath. more time. And now when the breath goes in, feel as if you're pulling prana, life, from the air. Feel that the air is actually life itself, breathing into your body, filling your lungs with life. And then let it go, surrender it back, surrender the air back to life. And then fill in with the life of the air again. And then let it go again. Give it back. And now when you pull the air in, pull it down even lower than your lungs to your belly. Breathe life to the belly. And then give it back. And now bring it in, bring in the life, breath, to the second chakra. And give it back. And breathe it in. Feel the air bringing life to your second chakra. Little feathers of air enlivening you. And then give it back. Breathe in as if it's your first breath of this lifetime. And then breathe out as if it's your last breath of this life. And then breathe in all the way down. Life itself, and then give it back. And now just breathe. And feel that place where everything is okay. Let everything be okay. Let yourself be home. Home as the place where everything is okay. No effort, just breath. And just open your eyes when you're ready.
So what I'd like to do now is open this up for some questions. If you have any questions for Judith and Corey or myself, we're gonna start to take some questions here. So I'd like to jump into that. Does anybody want to start?
Hi. I don't know a ton about Tantra, but I've heard that there's ways that it can actually increase energy, and I find that I'm tired a lot, and I'm wondering, to know a little bit more about the energetic side of it.
There are other forms of Tantra that would be more specific to building energy in general, like Kundalini yoga, other forms of Tantra. There's white Tantra, which is solo practice, which I think would give great benefit with that, like Ipsalu Tantra. And then I get energy from building my capacity to breathe more fully. And so the more I build that that ability with my breath, the more I naturally have more energy. So that's kind of the extent of it, specific to what I do with Tantra, is just that the natural outcome of increasing your breath.
Thanks.
Hi. What's the difference is there any difference or similarity difference between Reiki and Tantra?
Ooh, that's a good question. And yes and no and yes. So
That's what I figured.
and so in the Tantra school that I come from, it's basically Reiki-esque, but it's not just with the palms of your hands. It's with, all your body. You're extending through your heart. If you're lovers, you can do it with your second chakras. And so that sacred energy exchange, so that kind of hearkening back to that little thing I said, how deep can you glow? That's Reiki, right?
Thank you.
Anybody else?
So all three of you are empaths, correct? Corey's not an empath, but Ora and Judith are empaths. So how would someone know if they are an empath?
A great question. There's a self-assessment in the beginning of this book, but basically empaths are sponges. And if you're around somebody who has, very disturbing energy, you might take it on in your body and feel exhausted or get some ache or pain you didn't have, or start feeling toxic or sick or anxious or depressed or jittery, where suddenly your mood changes when you're around others or in a room. Empaths can feel energy in a room. And so empaths are very sensitive to energy, and they tend to need a lot of alone time to replenish themselves, which is something I'm asking for a lot. And you need your alone time, not as much as I do, but you need it, and I need a lot. And so empaths need to ask for their alone time. They often are sensitive to noise, smells, or excessive talking. If somebody's talking at you, right in your face, like that woman right there, it can feel very draining. You're looking around. No, this one. Yeah. Yeah. Empaths often have too much patience, and so they let it go on for too long, and then you go home exhausted. Whereas with him, he's definitely not an empath. And so he doesn't feel energy really in his daily life, do you? Where I'm sensing things and feeling things all the time. We were driving and I was asking him, well, what are you emotionally feeling now? And he looked at me and he says, I'm not feeling anything, I'm driving. It's a whole different way of being.
This is the
Empath.
question, yes, that women tend to ask men. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? Where they look at us blankly like nothing.
Right, exactly. It's nothing, but as an empath, I wouldn't want to be with another empath. It would drive me crazy. I'm enough to handle. I have enough going on in terms of what makes me comfortable, my comfort level, and feeling strong and feeling centered. And if I'm too tired, I'll leave places. So it's constantly in flux. I just don't stay if I go to a social situation. Empaths don't usually like to stay for 5 hours at once. And, I'm usually done at 1 or 2 hours. So it's just a different way of being. Whereas non-empaths, they just don't process it that way. But what's the biggest difference between us in that respect?
Well, I call you in my own mind. I think of you as as an emotional weather vane, and so you will, feel more deeply, and things affect you feeling-wise, energetically-wise, deeply, and so, that's an invitation to me. Not, I'm not going to go to you and say you should be more tough or not worry about it. Whereas instead, your stress or the way you're affected by something is an opportunity for me to tune up versus you to tune down or tone down. So, do I drain you? No, I wouldn't say that you drain me, but your sensitivities are my opening to like reminders to know that things impact you and to get that I'm having an impact more than otherwise I would think. So it's really good for you to be there so I get my impact on the world.
Let's talk a little bit, since we went in that direction, with this question of sensitivity versus being an empath, because I think it's an important area to go to. I think a lot of people might feel that they're sensitive. Does that then make them an empath?
Well, there's a spectrum of sensitivity. And you have on the high end the empaths who are emotional sponges, and it's like we're holding something with 50 fingers instead of 5. It's what I mean. We have just like everything's fluid, and we're sensing and feeling. And with you, your wasn't it your book? Yeah. I mean, I could feel energy coming from her book. So it's a constant way, because she's going to become a healer. And she wants to go to the University of Santa Monica. She's going to look into it. Laura went there. You might want to talk to her. But anyways, like I'm constantly interacting in the world that way. And he isn't. He'll pick a book up, sign it, and it's done. So it's not better or worse, but on the spectrum, there's on the lowest end of the spectrum are the narcissists and the psychopaths who have empathy deficient disorder, because they're wired differently, so they don't have empathy as we know it. That's a whole other topic. But then in the middle of the spectrum, there you have loving people with open hearts who I feel what you're feeling and I feel for you, but I don't absorb it. I feel for you. And then up a little bit more on the spectrum are the highly sensitive people who are overwhelmed by all the sensory input, the noise, the smells, the sounds, the light, too many people, crowds, very sensitive, very loving, very thoughtful. But they don't absorb necessarily, and they don't have the extraordinary perceptual abilities that empaths have, which I write about in the last chapter, and that's becoming an animal empath or a plant empath, being able to commune, let's say, with the animal world. Know it's real, that you have a special talent, so your intuition can expand way out in those areas. So that's just in general the way I view it at the moment.
Right. There's this gorgeous tree right near my neighborhood. I mean, with roots that go on for days. It's like the grandfather. It's like the wise, sagacious tree. And it's just stunning. And my husband and I were driving by that street, and it was sort of, it had a fence around it. I'm like, oh, no. You're not going to cut this tree down. But it had one of its arms were branches. See, arms. There you go. That's an empath interpretation right there. Do you know? And I thought, and I was very aware, again, being the observer, being mindful, as opposed to just falling apart, and feeling that I had to get out of the car and hug it right in that moment and weep for its, branch removal. So it's good to know this about ourselves. It's good to know that, yes, I am an empath. Yes, I am sensitive. Yes, I am these things, and I don't have to go there. I don't have to react. I don't, it's having this information about ourselves, which your book is just chock full of, that we can put it into perspective, that we can identify ourselves, have that information, and then know how to act accordingly with it. That is so helpful. Do you know? I think more and more of us who feel these things on such a deep level and don't know what to do with it, and don't know what to do when it goes into an emotional level. Do you know? That it goes from the first, I'm feeling something, oh, I'm really feeling it. Oh my God, my heart is aching. Oh, I'm this, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling, and then I talk about that in my book about going on automatic. You're on the hamster wheel and you can't get off of it. Do you know?
Yeah, but that's what I love about tantric sessions is that you bring all that into it. It's not you're sitting in a chair with a therapist going, You're with somebody who is right there with you. Like who's sitting, I mean, you have to be accountable for yourself, I mean, in a wonderful way, where you're feeling it. And if you're afraid and you want to run out of the room, that's what you deal with. It's really powerful because you're not just talking about it, you're getting to these levels, which I yearn for at that, then and now. But it's also useful just you're at an end of a pattern. You've tried everything maybe. You're still in that pattern. And you want an energetic change. And that's,
Yeah, energy is so important. Anybody else have a question they'd like to ask?
Being an empath, I heard that, for an example, that negative people make healthy people sick. So when you pick up negative energy from other people, how do you handle it and so you don't get yourself in any position of being sick?
Well, it's kind of my life's work. It's in process constantly. But that's basically what this book is about, is how do you be an empowered empath? How do you be in a relationship, and not bolt, and be empowered and learn how to do it. Just learn how to do it, with somebody who's loving in a relationship area. But in terms of general negative energy out there, if I'm clear, if I'm centered, if I'm walking around and I butt up against, because I feel I'm walking, I feel everybody and everything that's that's around me. It's just the way I function with my environment. And to me, it's really beautiful. I love it.
Do you get backaches or headaches or anything?
I tend to somatize. That's been the challenge of my life because I take it on in my body, and then I get this, I get that, I get another, and constantly, learning to center or channel and sharing that with him. That was a big deal for me to share that I do that. How can I be in a relationship when I have all these things happening to me all the time? That's what goes through my mind. I'm just telling you, and to be able to tell him. And what did you say to me this morning? You said something so helpful. Do you remember? There's something like, do I look like I'm having difficulty with this? Or something. And thank you. I'm having difficulty with it because, in the past, I just wouldn't mention it all. I would just keep it silent. And so, in terms of negative energy, I've learned how to center myself. I don't see it as my business to take on the energy of other people. I see it as an intrusion. I don't see it as being more compassionate to do that, but sometimes when, I have little ways to get in, and I start feeling it, then I deal with it right away, where I'll go into meditation. Like last night, I was just meditating ferociously as I felt something going off. And I want to find myself again. I want to I want to clear it, and I want to come back to my heart. And so there are all kinds of other techniques, but I also look at whatever I'm triggered by in you is usually an issue I haven't worked out in myself. So in the long run of healing, that's what it's about. And then once I've healed it to a certain degree, I love how you sit on his lap. That's so nice. So nice. And so the more I heal, like anything else, the more you heal yourself, the less the outside affects you so much.
I mean, yes.
So is an empath a psychic or can be a psychic?
And intuitive empaths have all kinds of skills. They can be mediumship empaths and sense the other side. They can be telepathic, know what you're thinking, precognitive, the future. Because on an energy level, it's all one. You tune in, just to the oneness. You don't tune into, it's there, it's in the past, the future. It's all one. And I think that's what Tantra does. It brings you, you're not thinking about your past when you're doing, except, whatever comes up. Yeah. When you're doing a Tantra session, you're in the moment, and whatever comes up, it could be a trauma from your childhood. Suddenly that comes up, and yeah.
Yeah, as we bring loving attention and presence, oftentimes issues arise from the past, and we don't have to, pick through the garbage to toss out the trash, and at the same time, we don't just disregard that this is a big deal. We can just feel it together, love it, and release it. And so, that's just an example of how, past pain can get processed during a session.
Exactly. And somebody shows up for you. There's somebody actually who knows what they're doing, who's sitting across from you, if you're willing to open in that way, to help clear. Someone who knows how to work with energy, somebody who can sense into you and be big enough to hold it and not be blown away by whatever it is you're going to share. And then you begin to feel energy shifting in your body. And so that's how the healing happens, is when you get to an energetic level.
And do you as an empath know when you meet another empath? Even if they don't know that they are one?
I can feel people's openness. I could feel if people are shut down. I could feel if people are open. I could feel how much they're feeling. So I can gauge that. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Anybody else have a question?
Hi. I'm also an empath, and I can feel when people read my reports or read my work that I give to a client. So you wrote a book, and a lot of people read it. Did you feel people responding to the things you said or getting lit up? And did it put you into a growth period? Did you have to meditate a lot? What was it like to put out a book?
It was amazing. I love writing. 'Cause I get to be alone with myself, which is a very pleasurable state for me. When I had such passion about writing this particular book because I just felt so strongly there was a need for this. And I've been talking about empaths since the 90s, but I suddenly felt a need to put it all together.
And do you feel the energetic? Do you feel the energetic of the people reading it and responding to it?
I write it for them. Whenever I write, and that's always been my practice, although they say in writing classes, don't write for other people. It's not exactly what I'm doing. I'm feeling what the need is in the collective so that I can say what's needed. And I love that. It's a wonderful feeling. But then after I write the book, do I feel them reading it? No. I've kind of let it go. When you write a book, you have to let it go when you turn it in. And then it has a life of its own. It's a bit different. But I get a lot of feedback all the time. People tell me.
Great news. I'm terrified to put out something a million people would read. I imagine myself just being electrocuted of all that attention, but it sounds like it wasn't bad. So.
I don't think about it once I let the book go. Yeah.
I think it's like birth, you give birth, Well,
She's telling you.
I'm just saying, yeah. Meaning I wrote a book, and that was like giving birth for me, and I've also birthed babies. And I think it's all just a wonderful way of you've lived with something, the gestation period, whether you're carrying a baby for 9 months or you're working on a book for 9 years, however long a period of time, you release it. You let it go out into the universe. And then there's this completion, there's this feeling of it. And not everybody's going to love your work. Not everybody's going to think you have the most beautiful baby. Do you know, you have to release. It's like release and let go. And I found that to be very freeing, actually. Do you know, it was very liberating for me personally.
Oh, absolutely. And what we did last week, a number of us got together, Corey and Ora and Ben and a few others, my friend Dr. Ron Alexander, and we did a book blessing for the book now to give the book an energetic, to love it up. To love it up so it can go higher. And we all went around in a circle and shared our favorite books. And then we sent, they sent energy to this book to take it to the next level, because it's only been out a couple of months. So it was, Nice.
It was beautiful. It was really a beautiful gathering. And I loved being a part of it. And I agree with Judith. You know, when you write something, you write it out of love. You want to share it with other people. You want to help people. And it's out of love that we do this.
That feels so good, and that's the essence of Tantra, really, is to get in touch with the love.
Yeah, the energy. It
to
is.
find that.
Yeah.
And not having attachment.
Right, exactly. Is that, oh, yeah, that's beautiful that you're feeling what you're feeling. Yeah, yeah, no, it's feeling so much, but I think that this idea of letting go and the liberation of that, and that, you know, just you're handing it out, you know, you've done your end of it. Of course we want to reach people, we want them to receive the message, and it's through our suffering that we write our greatest stories that we want to share with other people, so that they can, you know, that we all pass this along to one another, that we're all here learning together. It's really what it's about, in my opinion. It's all about the learning.
So inspirational to hear it from like other sensitive people, because sometimes as an empath you're almost like afraid to do things because you're like, to anything you do is like an incredible amount of energy that you have to handle. So it's nice when you hear other people who've done something you want to do, and knowing that they don't just like meditate for hours in the bathtub waiting for it to go away.
No, I mean, meditation is certainly helpful, for sure, and I highly recommend it. We're human, you know. We've got this condition. It's called being human, do you know? And we all feel what we feel and experience what we're experiencing. And the beauty of, even with Judith's recent book, which is just so full of so much help, is that we can help one another too, which is what Sacred Sundays is about, is to raise consciousness, raise awareness, so that we can have those experiences ourselves and then take it out into the world and affect change, like Gandhi said. You know, it starts with us, and then we bring it out into the world. So, anybody else? I'm getting this sign from Ben that we're coming to the end of our lovely time together, this journey that we took together. So we'd like to end this also. We started, for those of you that weren't here, we started with a meditation. Maybe we could, Judith or Corey, do you want to, I began the meditation, maybe we can close with, do you want to do something together? Do you want to do something together?
All right, thank you everyone for being here. And
Yes, thank you everyone for coming tonight.
And where will this be? This will be posted?
Yes, this will be posted. All of the Sacred Sundays are filmed, as you can see, and then they go up on a wonderful site called The Conscious Good. So if you've missed any of them, this will go up in a couple of months, because we upload them with each one that we do. So it will be there for you to see, and others as well. And what else? What else do we need to know?
Did you do one with Catherine?
I did. I've done one with
It's
Catherine.
Catherine Woodward Thomas.
Yes.
Oh, right here.
I did Catherine, who, I'm sorry for my
It was
back,
amazing.
Catherine, and those that are
Amazing
behind
work
me.
with
Yes.
relationships.
Yes, Catherine Woodward Thomas, Conscious Uncoupling. We were together and calling in the one. Dr. Ronald Alexander was
Wise Mind, Open Mind.
Wise Mind, Open Mind was my most recent guest. And go on my website, oranadrich.com. In the schedule, the upcoming months, we have it throughout the year. Some wonderful guests like Corey and Judith. You know, again, wonderful thought leaders, shapeshifters, people that are really making a difference, that we can all benefit from the research and from the passion and from the commitment that we're making to help understand who we are better. Do you know? So, you know, stay tuned to that. And Mystic Journey is opening up a new event space. We're very excited to share. We'll be a part of that. They're going to be moving there. Well, this is staying, not to be confused. Mystic Journey bookstore is not going anywhere. That's the best part of this. But they're adding a whole new event space on Lincoln Boulevard, which Ben Decker has been such a incredible part of manifesting this absolutely exquisite space. So please join us there and check in with some of the events that are going to be happening. Some really beautiful speakers and workshops and meditation and yoga. It's just going to be fabulous. So tune into that. And so let's end it with something energetically divine. What do you want to do? What do you suggest?
This is I've just been, had a request for a Lakota song. This is the man-woman song. Which is Shalawan, Tewa Hilaku, 1 week lock in Tahoe, Sheheyo, Wehaya, Wehaya, Weho, Heya, Heyo. Way-oh, 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 hi-ya. Way-oh, way, hi-ya. Way, hi-ya, way, hi-ya, way-oh, way. Way, hi-ya, way, hi-ya, way-oh, way, ya, hey-yo. Which is Shalawan, Tewa Hilaku, 1 week lock in Tahoe, Sheheyo. Way hi-ya, way hi-ya, way ya, hey yo.
Beautiful. Thank you, Paul. Thank you all again for being here tonight.